Well, good Thursday afternoon. Thanks for joining us again for an update on the tropics across all real basins. We have the Atlantic and the Pacific that are extremely active. And in fact, in the Western Hemisphere, there are currently 7 named systems, or 7 systems, many of which have names, 3 of which will likely be getting names in the short term within the next 5 days. Their odds are quite high of getting those names before they start progressing westwards. 3 in the Atlantic basin, one of which has a name. That is Florence. It was a Category 4 hurricane yesterday. Now it is weakened significantly down to a Category 2. And then we have Invest 92L and Invest 93L, both classified as tropical waves at the moment, but have quite high odds in the next 2 to 5 days at getting the names of Helene and Isaac. I want to show you here the evolution of Florence over the last 36 hours. It went from rapid intensification to a Category 4 this time yesterday to rapid weakening. Why? Wind shear has kicked on, and yesterday it was able to isolate itself and kind of shield it from any of the wind shear kind of taking over it. Not today. It's back down to a Category 2 storm. A wind sustained at 105, so right in the middle ground there of a firm Category 2. But there are some indications that the wind shear will stay up for the next 24, 36, maybe even 48 hours, and will continue to eat away at the energy of the system, continuing to blow the tops of that thunderstorm activity. The shear's coming out of the southwest and displacing it to the northeast of the center. You can see the center is almost exposed on the most recent satellite imagery here, so it could weaken down to a Category 1 hurricane at some point in time. Something to note here is that Florence's intensity forecast will vary greatly in the coming days, just as we saw within the last 24 to 36 hours. Went from a Category 4 storm, went from really a Category 1 to a Category 4, and then back down to a Category 2, possibly even a Category 1. So we expect those variations to continue in the coming days as it moves in a gradually more conducive atmosphere for it to re-strengthen and kind of restructure. The size and the strength of Florence at any point in the future is going to impact its track forecast. There's still a ton of uncertainty here. Nothing is set in stone, but we are now 24 hours closer to the event possibly moving closer to the eastern seaboard, so things are getting a little bit clearer, but obviously nothing is 100%, going to happen. Although somewhat clear, there remains low confidence in the forecast. You got to keep that in mind here. Really, until the later part of this weekend, we won't get a much clearer picture. The potential is there for a high-impact event along the eastern seaboard. Certainly Bermuda, which will already start to see effects like increasing swells within the next 24 hours. And depending on the exact location of where it passes by Bermuda, to the north, to the south, right over the island, will determine, obviously, the impacts there. Here's another look at the presentation on satellite imagery. The infrared, we're looking at the temperature of the cloud tops here. The brighter reds and yellows indicating colder cloud tops higher up in the sky, not encompassing the entire center of circulation there, and that's because of that wind shear in an unfavorable environment right now. But look, just in the next couple of days, it'll likely see that high wind shear. Depending on the timing of when it breaks down, once that happens, I mean, it's over warm water. It's going to be in a moist environment. We're going to see that intensity shoot right up. And look what's ahead of it. In its forecast track off towards the west, favorable wind shear environment. On top of that, the dry air at that point as it moves west will be to the south of the system. Right now, it is helping to kind of degrade it a little bit, but it won't be doing so for very long. Here's a look at the current sea surface temperatures. Again, a Category 2 storm. Moving over waters that, without the wind shear, it probably wouldn't have weakened so much. It's very warm, 82 degrees. You need 80 degrees or warmer typically to find tropical activity sustaining itself. And the forecast area of where it's going to be moving in the coming days, it only gets warmer. And the ocean heat content, it's not just along the surface with those warm temperatures. It extends down to a depth, especially the farther west, that it is tracking. So the odds only getting better for a stronger Florence in the short term and the long term for its duration of its life. So the steering still going to be an issue here, where exactly it's heading. There's been a lot of uncertainty for the last several days. We expect more of it in the next couple of days, thanks to these dual areas of high pressure. In between it is a weakness. Within about 2 to 3 days' time, as it progresses off towards the west-northwest, it'll hit a fork in the road. Is the trough that's going to be coming on in going to be strong enough to pick up Florence and drive it north through that very narrow escape route? Will Florence be strong enough to be influenced by upper-level steering? If it is weaker at this point in time, it likely will not be impacted. So it really depends on the strength, the positioning of Florence, and the strength, the positioning of that trough, of whether or not it zips off to the north, stays out over the open Atlantic Ocean harmlessly, or it misses its connection, it misses its flight, and moves to the west, gets stuck under this building ridge, and gets locked in somewhere either just off the coast of the eastern seaboard or potentially right on top of it. So a lot can happen here. It can be either a very dire scenario or one that we dodge a bullet. So we're going to have to really watch this as we get into the next 7 to 10 days. Here is the latest track from the Hurricane Center at 11 a.m. this morning. Notice, compared to yesterday, a considerable shift off towards the west. By day 5, that cone of uncertainty is quite wide, and for good reason. Look at some of these forecast models. There is still a very large spread past 5 days, even up until 5 days. It's very large, 500-600 miles. Then it almost doubles to like 1,200 miles by day 5 and beyond. So still a lot of ironing out to do in terms of the details and the track forecast. Now let's look at the ensembles here. We'll start off with the GFS. This is going to be running the same model about 50 different times, changing the initializations. Certain variables they'll tweak to see if there's a different outcome. And you can see here there is large spread, but there is a shift off towards the west here. A lot of the models now closer to the coastline, very few of them making an impact or a landfall on the eastern seaboard. On the contrary, the European, which has been indicating a landfall along the eastern seaboard for a couple of days now, kind of going back and forth to keeping it offshore, bringing it up along the coast, is still having a lot of its ensemble members impacting the eastern seaboard, and a lot of this is progressively off towards the west there. So take that as it is. It'll change several more times as Florence moves off towards the west-northwest. All right, let's compare the operational model runs of these. So we got the GFS and the European. The European will be in the red. The GFS will be in the yellow. Good to note here is that the European run, we're taking the 0Z data, which is last evening's initialization. We're not going to get the new data until later this afternoon, so it may be different when you're viewing this, but watch this from last night's data and this morning's GFS data. GFS, massive storm. Euro, a little bit smaller, but surely a strong one, moving off towards the west, towards the eastern seaboard. The GFS, the latest run here, indicating a much closer run to the eastern seaboard. My worry with that, or really either of these two runs, is when they get stuck under a very strong ridge like that, there is not going to be an exit strategy for it to move on off towards the north. It will stall it out, and if it sits along the coastline, we can have a lot of rain. If it sits just off the coastline, we can have very heavy surf and gusty winds, and potentially re-strengthening with that very warm water there. And then notice here, as it gets stuck under that ridge, it just sits and loops off the coastline there. Potentially. Again, this is a forecast model, and it'll change. We still got a lot more runs between now and then. So given its current positioning out in the middle of the Atlantic, really cool graphic here. This shows all storms that have passed within 200 miles of Florence's current position. If I step out of the way here and you look at the eastern seaboard, none of those storms, well, there is one that has impacted the United States, and that was back in like the 1800s, okay? Now, just looking at this, I'm not saying that it cannot happen. There are firsts all the time when we talk about weather. But statistically, historically, the stats are on our side here for this to maybe come close and then move off to the north. Which is right? History, statistics, current models, who knows? Time will tell. All right, right behind Florence, we have two other systems, too, that bear some talking about, especially Helene here. 90% chance, well, not named Helene yet, but will be. 90% chance of getting that name within 5 days. And we're going to talk about the models with this in just a second. And then right behind it, the potential here of this is 93L becoming Isaac. 50% chance there within 5 days. Quickly, I want to show you how the models paint things with the potential of Helene. This is going to be more of a southern runner and could potentially be an issue for the Windward Islands, Guadeloupe, over towards Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, possibly, as we go way out in time here. This goes all the way out until next week. So we'll watch that one closely, too. I know all the attention's on Florence right now, but we'll probably have to start watching Helene as well. All right, that's the latest on today's update for you. We'll have another one later on this evening and again tomorrow. If you have any questions, you can find me on social media at any time. Facebook, Meteorologist Tim Pandages, or on Twitter, 13 Tim Pandages. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.